Hello, history enthusiasts. Welcome to Factverse, where we delve into the past. Today, we're exploring 10 rulers criticized for their harsh rule. Let's understand the complexities that shaped them. Let's unravel the narratives of these controversial leaders. Our journey begins with the legendary Genghis Khan. The founder and leader of the Mongol Empire in the 13th century, is often portrayed as a formidable and strategic military leader. While his conquests were marked by military campaigns, Genghis Khan implemented a system of governance that was also known for its tolerance and innovation, such as religious freedom and a unified legal code. However, it's important to note that the characterization of Genghis Khan's rule as brutal can vary based on historical perspectives. Genghis Khan did employ ruthless tactics in warfare, and his conquests resulted in significant destruction. He was known for being strategic and often implemented harsh measures against those who resisted Mongol rule. In terms of brutality at the end of his life, Genghis Khan died in 1227, and the latter part of his life was marked by continued military campaigns to expand and consolidate the Mongol Empire. The methods employed in these campaigns were consistent with the military strategies he had used throughout his rule. Genghis Khan's legacy is complex, with assessments of his rule considering both the military conquests and the administrative innovations. While his tactics in warfare were undoubtedly ruthless, he is also credited with creating a vast and interconnected empire that facilitated trade, cultural exchange, and religious freedom. Shifting to the colonial era, our next ruler is Leopold II of Belgium. Leopold II of Belgium was the king of the Belgians from 1865 to 1909. His legacy is marred by his exploitation of the Congo Free State, a vast territory in Central Africa that he claimed as his personal colony. Leopold II's rule over the Congo is infamous for the extreme brutality and exploitation inflicted upon the indigenous population. Under the guise of philanthropy and development, Leopold's administration pursued ruthless policies that led to forced labor, violence, and atrocities. Workers were subjected to harsh conditions, and the extraction of resources, particularly rubber, was carried out in a manner that caused immense suffering and loss of life. As the exploitation of the Congo became widely known and condemned, international pressure mounted on Leopold II. In 1908, under increasing scrutiny and criticism, he ceded control of the Congo to the Belgian state. While Leopold II's brutal rule in the Congo was a major aspect of his legacy, it's important to note that his actions in Africa were the primary source of controversy. In Belgium itself, his reign saw developments in infrastructure and modernization, and he is remembered for his role in the expansion of the country's colonial endeavors. Venturing into 16th century Russia, we encounter Ivan the Terrible, also known as Ivan IV, was the Grand Prince of Moscow from 1533 to 1547 and the first Tsar of Russia from 1547 to 1584. His reign is marked by both accomplishments and extreme brutality, and the title, Terrible, reflects his reputation for harsh rule. Throughout his rule, Ivan undertook significant centralization and administrative reforms, contributing to the development of the Russian state. However, he is also infamous for acts of extreme violence and cruelty, particularly during the latter part of his reign. The period from the 1560s onwards, sometimes referred to as the Oprichnina, was characterized by Ivan's use of the Oprichniki, a paramilitary force tasked with maintaining his authority. During this time, Ivan conducted purges, executions, and mass repressions against perceived enemies, real or imagined. The city of Novgorod, in particular, suffered greatly during Ivan's brutal campaign. Ivan's reign was marked by personal tragedy as well. In a fit of rage, he killed his own son and heir, Ivan Ivanovich, in 1581, further cementing his legacy as a ruler known for his erratic and violent behavior. While Ivan the Terrible's early years saw him as a capable and visionary leader, the latter part of his reign was indeed marked by brutality, and it contributed to a dark and complex legacy. His death in 1584 marked the end of the Rurik dynasty and led to a period of political instability in Russia. Fast forwarding to the 20th century, we encounter Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s until his death in 1953, was known for his brutal and authoritarian rule throughout his tenure. While Stalin's policies were marked by industrialization, collectivization of agriculture, and victory in World War II, they were also characterized by political repression, purges, and human rights abuses. Stalin's brutality did not diminish at the end of his life. In fact, some of the most severe purges and mass repressions occurred in the late 1930s during a period known as the Great Purge or the Great Terror. This included the execution of many high-ranking officials, intellectuals, and perceived political enemies, as well as the imprisonment and persecution of countless others. Stalin's rule was marked by a cult of personality, extensive surveillance, and control over all aspects of Soviet life. The purges and political repression continued until his death in 1953. It's worth noting that Stalin's legacy is controversial, with some crediting him for industrializing the Soviet Union and leading the country to victory in World War II, while others emphasize the human cost of his policies, including the loss of millions of lives through executions, forced labor, and famine. No list of harsh rulers is complete without Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler remained a brutal ruler until the end of his life. In the final days of World War II, as the Allies closed in on Germany, Hitler's regime faced imminent defeat. Rather than surrendering, Hitler chose to end his life. On April 30, 1945, in his underground bunker in Berlin, Hitler committed suicide by taking cyanide and shooting himself. In the months leading up to his death, Hitler's actions reflected a leader unwilling to accept defeat. He issued orders for a scorched earth policy, calling for the destruction of infrastructure and resources as German forces retreated. This order contributed to the widespread destruction during the final stages of the war. Hitler's brutal rule had been characterized by atrocities, persecution, and aggression throughout his time in power. His ideology, marked by anti-Semitism, racism, and authoritarianism, led to the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of others during the Holocaust. The war crimes committed under Hitler's leadership, including the invasion of sovereign nations and the mass murder of civilians, contribute to his legacy as one of history's most infamous and brutal rulers. Turning our attention to Southeast Asia, we encounter polpot, the leader of the Khmer Rouge and the Prime Minister of Democratic Kampuchea, Cambodia, from 1976 to 1979, was known for orchestrating one of the most brutal and catastrophic regimes in modern history. His rule led to widespread human rights abuses, mass atrocities, and the deaths of an estimated 1.7 million people due to execution, forced labor, and starvation. Pol Pot's brutality did not diminish at the end of his life. The Khmer Rouge's radical policies aimed at transforming Cambodia into an agrarian communist society resulted in the forced evacuation of urban areas, mass executions, and the establishment of labor camps. The infamous killing fields are a stark symbol of the atrocities committed under Pol Pot's leadership. As the atrocities became known, international condemnation grew, and in 1979, following a Vietnamese invasion, the Khmer Rouge was ousted from power. Pol Pot fled to the Thai border region and continued to lead a guerrilla insurgency. Pol Pot's life ended in 1998 under mysterious circumstances. He died in a remote area of Cambodia near the Thai border. Some reports suggest that he died from a heart attack, while others suggest suicide. Regardless of the circumstances of his death, Pol Pot's legacy remains associated with the immense suffering and loss of life inflicted upon the Cambodian people during his brutal regime. Benito Mussolini, the leader of fascist Italy, ruled from 1922 until his downfall in 1943. His rule is characterized by authoritarianism, suppression of dissent, and alignment with Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany. During his early years in power, Mussolini pursued aggressive foreign policies and implemented repressive measures domestically. The use of censorship, the suppression of political opposition, and the establishment of a totalitarian state were hallmarks of his regime. Mussolini's government also enacted discriminatory laws against Jews, mirroring the anti-Semitic policies of Nazi Germany. Mussolini's brutality escalated during World War II, particularly with Italy's entry into the conflict as an Axis power. The regime engaged in war crimes and atrocities, including the use of chemical weapons in Ethiopia, mass executions, and the deportation of Jews. As Italy faced military defeats and internal unrest, Mussolini's power eroded. In 1943, he was arrested, and Italy surrendered to the Allies. Mussolini was then rescued by German forces and established the Italian Social Republic in northern Italy, a puppet state under German control. Mussolini's rule came to a violent end in 1945 when he was captured by Italian partisans. He, along with his mistress Clara Petacci and other members of his entourage, was executed. The bodies were then publicly displayed in Milan. Mussolini's legacy is one of a dictator who led Italy into an alliance with Nazi Germany, engaged in aggressive military campaigns, and presided over a repressive regime marked by brutality and human rights abuses. Shifting to the Korean peninsula, we explore the rule of Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-il, the leader of North Korea, ruled from 1994 until his death in 2011. Throughout his leadership, Kim Jong-il maintained an authoritarian regime characterized by strict control, repression of dissent, and a focus on military strength. Kim Jong-il's rule was marked by a continuation of the cult of personality established by his father, Kim Il-sung. The country faced economic hardships, food shortages, and isolation from the international community. The regime's policies, coupled with a pervasive surveillance system and severe restrictions on freedom of expression, resulted in a lack of basic human rights for the North Korean population. While Kim Jong-il maintained a strong grip on power until his death, and his leadership was marked by oppressive measures, it's important to note that assessments of rulers can vary. The circumstances of Kim Jong-il's death in 2011, officially attributed to a heart attack during a train journey, led to speculation about his health and the political dynamics within North Korea. Overall, Kim Jong-il's legacy is one of a ruler who continued the authoritarian practices of his father, perpetuating a regime known for its repressive nature and human rights abuses. Next on our list is Saddam Hussein, the former president of Iraq. Saddam Hussein was widely regarded as a brutal ruler throughout much of his reign, which lasted from 1979 until his removal from power in 2003. His rule was characterized by authoritarianism, human rights abuses, and political repression. In the later years of his regime, particularly in the 1980s and 1990s, Saddam Hussein's government was accused of numerous atrocities, including the use of chemical weapons against Kurdish civilians in the town of Halabja in 1988. His invasion of Kuwait in 1990 led to the Gulf War, further cementing his reputation as a ruthless leader. The brutality of Saddam Hussein's regime continued into the 2000s. After the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003, Hussein was captured by coalition forces. His trial and subsequent execution in 2006 marked the end of his life. The execution itself was surrounded by controversy, with criticism directed at the manner in which it was carried out. Overall, Saddam Hussein's legacy is one of authoritarian rule, human rights abuses, and a history of brutality against perceived political enemies and minority groups in Iraq. Our final ruler on this list is Idi Amin. Idi Amin, the former president of Uganda, ruled from 1971 to 1979. His regime is widely recognized for its brutality, human rights abuses, and political repression. Amin's rule was characterized by widespread violence, arbitrary arrests, torture, and extrajudicial killings. Throughout his presidency, Amin targeted various groups, including political opponents, intellectuals, and ethnic communities, particularly the Acholi and Lengo ethnic groups. The expulsion of the Asian community in 1972, which resulted in the displacement of tens of thousands of people, is another infamous episode during his rule. Amin's government was marked by a lack of regard for human rights and the rule of law. Political opponents were eliminated, dissent was suppressed, and Amin cultivated an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. Amin's regime came to an end in 1979 when Tanzanian forces, with the support of Ugandan exiles, overthrew him. After being ousted, Amin lived in exile in Saudi Arabia until his death in 2003. Considering the extensive human rights abuses and the oppressive nature of Amin's rule, he is widely regarded as a brutal dictator. The impact of his actions during his time in power continues to be remembered with deep concern and condemnation.